you?
Yeah, you. Let's
Okay.
have you introduced.
Well, you know
set
what?
it up, you know?
I'm so disappointed that the tree. So, okay, background real quick before I do the introduction. I had this fake tree that was here because I wanted to like kind of have something here in the podcast room, but Dawnyel and Kevin turned me down. So I'm a
Yeah,
little
well,
upset about it.
and Danielle was right. She's like, it's kind of like eating you,
Yeah.
right? It was intrusive.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
different ideas that we're going to implement. Anyways, I'm super pumped up for this episode. Dawnyel Smink is going to be with us today. She actually is someone that we saw a couple times speaking at events. And so we wanted to find out more about what she had going on. She gave us a book to read. It's called Don't Put Your Shit on Me. Don't project your shit on me.
Project, you got to get it right.
Don't
Jeff.
project your shit on me. Kevin and I both read it. We loved it. And Dawnyel, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, reading my book, and being comfortable with the shit word.
It's funny because one of the names that we thought we might come up with for this podcast was Insurance Uncut. And then we thought that, well, that might lead to a lot of swearing. It might feel like you got open field to do that.
For sure.
So we're not looking to get that vulgar, but shit's okay. I mean, we all have our shit, right?
Yes, absolutely. As long as you own it.
So what led you to write the book?
Mm-hmm.
So I love writing. At the time when I started, finishing that book, I had written some of it, and I went to my editor and I was like, okay, here's 4 books that I am writing. And, one of them was finished and one of them was partially finished and one of them was barely started. And then I had a nonfiction book that was halfway done. So I said, okay, here are the books. And she picked the one that was the least amount done, which is that book, and the one that was going to make me most uncomfortable and have to feel, good about putting it out. So she picked it, and we led with "Don't Project Your Shit on Me." So now I'm working on the next book right now. So actually, it was my editor's idea to start with that.
Wow.
Yes.
I can't imagine. And I have like co-wrote one book, which was a monumental task. And you said that you had 4 that you're working on?
Yeah, at the time. And I'm still like, actually, I finished one of them completely about a year ago. And I really talked to people about being authentic with yourself. And if it's not something that you feel like it feels genuine, then don't go forward with it. It's okay. Like, I had a printed copy, like the title, the whole cover, and everything was completely done. And I just said, you know what? I don't think this is the next book I'm putting out. I think it needs to go after the next one. So I think when you're writing, I think sometimes you have to really acknowledge that there's a space and a place and a time for it to come out sometimes, and not be like totally like freaked out by it.
Yeah.
I loved it because I just felt like I could relate to that a lot. Like just having the negativity and what did you say? The benefactors and the detractors, right? And we call it like the anchors and the engines.
Yeah.
People that fuel you up and the people that don't. And the things that fuel you up, the things that don't, the places that do and the places that don't. And it was an easier read too. I'm not the greatest reader. I never have been. I like audiobooks, but I like how easy it was as well. So appreciate you.
Thank you. It was written by design for that. We wanted it to be a fun book that was easy to read, that got the concepts through. I can be very in my brain, a lot. And so like that tends to go on paper, and my editor's like, no, let's make it fun and light and really easy. And so a lot of it came out to, like, if you ever want to write a book, one of the things I would suggest is just having a conversation with somebody and then recording it. So a lot of the content came from, like, she's like, in this chapter, you're, talking about, and we talked about the Snickers characters. And so we just had a conversation about it instead of me getting really analytical about why people have Snickers characters and going really deep into it. But we decided to make it fun and light.
Right.
Well, I know you wrote that down because we talked about it a little bit already. Got brought up twice today now.
Yeah.
That's something we wanted to bring up to you because that was one of our favorite parts of the book. And so Kevin and I were thinking, well, who are we when we're unsatisfied? Kevin, you go first.
I actually even like Googled it, like
Yeah.
who's, I think when I'm when I'm not my best self,
Mhm.
then I just get maybe just grumpy. And well, I guess I got to tell the real thing, because what I did look up was sometimes I'll even like bark orders like at my kids, like, whose shoes are over there? Why is the TV on?
Yeah.
Why do we have gymnastic stuff in here? Put your coat away. That. And so I was like,
And then it's your coat,
right. So it was Sergeant Hartman from Full Metal Jacket. But then I watched the video and I'm like, well, that's a bit much. I mean, I remember that, the scene, and I did rewatch it today, just like as he's, talking to, all of his recruits there. But I was thinking maybe a more lighthearted way about it would be like in the Muppets, the grumpy old men that were up in the top shelf, and they get all grumpy. So I did too. And I don't think I'm quite the Full Metal Jacket sergeant, but maybe sometimes.
I like the Muppets one. I
You
would
can
go
hear like the
Garfield.
music in the background right now.
So yeah, for me, I was like looking it up. I had to do that too. I was picking
Yeah.
Garfield because like I'm usually not grumpy, I think. I mean, I could be wrong, but when I'm really like hungry or like I'm over, I've done too much, I'm just like slumped and I don't want to do anything and I don't really want to talk to anybody. But it doesn't happen often.
It's pretty rare. I got to give you that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Getting better. That's all we can do.
I love that you guys shared that with me. I think it's been so much fun, like interacting with people and talking about like recognizing that Snickers character and then being able to like get yourself back to where you need to be. And then like, but give yourself some grace that you're not that person all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Right. And I think that, I mean, what you say in your book is like, when you at least be able to recognize it and call it out, and then even when you sit down with your friends, right, and then you help them identify, which is really kind of almost like an icebreaker.
mhm.
So you're like, boy, you're getting really grumpy,
Yeah.
and having that icebreaker of like, well, let me tell you about, who's your Snickers character, this is mine, and then you can call them out. And I think that all just goes back to being super real and authentic with the people you're with. And you strike me as a person who you're probably not going to be around too many people that seem fake. You
No,
want to be on, or like, just be real, like what it is. And we all know that we all don't live the Facebook life that is portrayed all the time, right?
oh, absolutely not. No, I believe people have moments, but that doesn't define who they are. It just means they had a moment and we're
Right.
the worst of ourselves. So the Snickers character came from the commercial, and then it came from recognizing my husband is Clint Eastwood and like
Eh,
trying to go, is he hungry? Is he tired? Like what's going on? And not evaluating him as a whole and by his behavior, but trying to fix it. But then I realized that with my Snickers character of Elaine, is that there was things that I would just get completely like wrapped up in and like flail my arms around and like she does when she walks into the apartment and in Seinfeld. And I was like, I'm not giving myself that grace. I can give it to other people, but I'm not giving it to myself. So I felt like the Snickers character was better for me than I think for other people, because it really gave me insight to like I can have moments too.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, we all have our shit, right?
Yes. Yes, just don't
But
project it.
with Clint,
right.
you just have to feed Clint, right? And then
Yes.
he's better.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What does Clint like to eat?
uh Everything. No, I'm kidding. Probably pizza or
Yeah.
steak. Yes.
All right.
That's funny. So let's go back a little bit. You've been in insurance for how long?
Over 2 decades.
Over 2 decades. And
Yeah.
you now, what was your first position ever in insurance?
Yeah, I actually chose it. I went from being a sixth grade teacher and I owned a company that did events. And then I chose insurance and went captive, which was great to learn about the industry. But then I really wanted to do commercial insurance and that didn't really fit with the company that I'd chosen. So I went independent in 2004 and joined the group that I'm at. And in 2008, I bought the group and have been running it since. And we have 85 locations in 20 different states. And I still have my book of business that is primarily commercial today. So it's been like short but long at the same time. And I'm like, then every time I say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that just must mean I'm getting old at that point in
I was
time.
gonna say, first off, for 2 decades, I mean, I'm shocked by that. You look great.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And then number two, I actually was reading about that. I totally forgot. I'm glad you brought it up that you were a teacher before. I think that's so cool that you transitioned from being a teacher into insurance. So, what attributes that helped you from being a teacher into going into the insurance industry?
Well, I think with being a teacher, first and foremost, you want to educate people. And I always joke that I use my degree every day because I have a degree in elementary education and a minor in special ed. And so I just use it in insurance. And everyone has special needs. You have to treat them appropriately and that's not a negative connotation. Special needs just means that there's a different way of that they learn, and the different ways that you interact with people. And so I always say that keeps me in mind that I need to tailor the conversations that I'm having with either agencies or clients to how they learn best or how you quote unquote sell them best. So I always think of that I'm not selling them, I'm educating them. And then insurance is all about risk transfer. And ultimately they're going to make a decision based off that education of how they're going to apply that risk transfer to their personal lives, their business, their agency, and then they make the decision of it. My job isn't to force feed them it's to educate them and have them make the right decision. So I feel like it goes really hand in hand with it. And so that's been my way of working with the clients, and it works really well with them because they feel like I'm in there to help them instead of selling them.
Yeah.
Pretty solid answer.
I mean, so important, right? I mean, being able to, in what you're talking about really is building a relationship. And, we talk about that, like the difference between a contact and a contract is the R for relationships and building rapport. And it can't be overstated enough. Too many times when people go into trying to sell anything, they make it so transactional and they're just hurting themselves.
It's
At
cringy.
any level. Yeah.
Like that's
It's
really the
worst.
biggest thing about it.
Yeah. And it's so critical that, like when I had my agencies and I was just like a teeny little compared to you, but I mean, we had 5 locations. I still can't like 85, but it was always about teaching the staff to talk about anything but insurance, anything else, just so develop that relationship. So back to you and how do you go? Did you always envision like, I want to have 85 locations or 100, or how do you go from a few to so many?
Well, it took a lot of years. I think I had to grow up and figure out how to really manage my agency before I could really help other agencies manage theirs. So with the locations that we have here, I can give them real life F ups and tell them like, hey, I went down that path before and here's what I did wrong. And here's what I've seen other agencies do wrong. I mean, I've been doing it for in January will be 16 years of working with agencies and having mine for almost 2 decades. It provides that context of it. So I feel like the last 5 years is when we've really grown, as a network. And I feel like that has happened because I needed to get to a point to be the leader that I needed to be for the people that I led. And sometimes I think we try and force leadership upon people when we haven't really become that leader. And so there was a lot of work I did. There was a lot of mentors and different types of trainings that I've done to help me get to a point that is like, okay, I think I can be the leader to the agencies we have now and the future agencies. And we want to continue to grow. And in order to do that, you have to take first responsibility of yourself and ask yourself, have I grown enough to get to that next level? And I feel like I have now. I hadn't then.
Yeah. Wow, that's really powerful. And so what steps did you take? What type of training and self-help and leadership classes, or what did you do to do that?
I started with actually Darren Hardy is one of my favorite mentors. I've done all his stuff. I
You
just
do the
went to
Darren dailies?
ever since, like, before that I worked with Darren, and I've gone to his business master class twice now. I've done he actually like spotlighted my book actually in one of the business master classes after, because that got me writing the book. Was I decided to finish that out after I went there. And so, like, yeah, the Darren dailies are great. It kind of keeps me on track. We do the training with our agencies too. So Darren's been a big part of it. I started having coaches about 10 years ago. And I feel like you should change coaches every year because you'll learn something new. So one of the last coaches I had, her and I culturally, how to run an organization did not match. But what was really cool that I learned from her was how not to deal with your team first off, right? Because there's things I learned from her not to do. So sometimes you learn from the things that they don't do well, but the things she did really well that's helped me a lot in the last probably 4 to 5 years is she understood KPIs. And so, like, I got really clear on what are the KPIs I need to know within my agency, within our group, and then how do I bring that to the people I serve. So, like, she was a different type of coach for me than I ever had before, because I usually had the ones that are like all about having like a really fun and loving culture, and she was very pragmatic.
Yeah.
But I learned a ton from her, so I was thankful for that.
You know what? That is something that I have never heard before, and I think is so true that, why wouldn't, I mean, you should switch coaches and learn, because they all have their different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, you get to learn them. And I still, which is really weird, because I go to the gym every morning and I listen to Darren Hardy, but I haven't got it the last few days. And now I'm wondering, like, why do I not have, because they come at 3:03 in the morning. Like, that's how I'd easily find it, but I didn't have it. But I just recently, about a month ago, started listening to Ed Milet. You ever listen to him?
Mm-hmm.
He's so good, but it just reinforces just like a different perspective. And I've been more about listening to him than, Darren Hardy recently, but I think Darren's
You're
awesome.
making Kev jealous about all the
Yeah.
Darren. The Compound Effect you got me on, and that was my favorite Audible
gosh.
book to date. And I've listened to quite a few.
Like, I mean, I can't believe how many episodes. I probably listened to every one that he's produced. I don't know if he's recycling. I mean, I've heard some recycled. In every single one, it's just power. Like, that's
Yeah.
so good.
And the same like 3 shirts,
It's
but I love it.
crazy.
Yes. and he has an orchid too, just like I suggested.
Yeah,
for you
right.
guys.
Yeah, right.
So he is someone that I'm striving to get on our podcast. Like, that's one of my goals. So if you have any connections, it would be massive.
You would make my day too.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
I do have a picture with them.
I thought you were going
at
to wait
one
to
of the
ask that at
events.
the end, and I love it how you asked it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was speaking at an event. There was like 3,000 people there speaking on stage. And I was with my buddy, and I'm like, where'd my buddy go? And everyone pours out of the conference, and he comes back and he goes, I got my picture with Darren. I go, what? And he goes, yeah, I just walked up the stairs in the back room. And I'm like, I'm going to find him. And open this one door that looked like to a back alley to the backstage, maybe just based on how it looked. I opened the door. He's standing right in front of me on the other side, like about to open it. And so I have this picture of me and him in the hallway in the back.
A bow tie that day? Right?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
So maybe if I send it to you and you send it to him, you're like, this guy would love to have you.
Kevin.
And we'll
Yeah.
Persistence.
Yes.
Darren's interesting because he's really evolved, that he spends less time with people one-on-one. And so, like, because the first time I went was almost 9 years ago to BMC.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first ones, and it was High Performance Forum. that he was doing, and it was in person, and there was a small group of us, and he actually launched the entrepreneurial roller coaster with our group, which was really cool. So he did the book launch with us. Like, he gave us the first copies of the book, he gave us champagne, and we got to have that experience with him. And there was less than 30 of us that were there.
Yeah.
But through the years, he has really developed that he does the online platform now because he wants more time for himself personally.
Yeah.
So he's really changed like how he does, his business, which I totally respect. So he's not as available as he used to be. But it's really cool because it's a learning lesson for all of us, is just honoring like where you're at compared to where you used to be, and how do you want to interact with the people that support, your business, and in which type of fashions you want to interact with them.
Yeah. And I mean, he's definitely an introvert
Mm-hmm.
by choice, for sure. Like, you can tell that, and he even talks about that as well. But anyways,
Less about Darren, more
yeah,
about
yeah, right.
Dawnyel.
Talk about
We're just geeking out.
talk about eat the frog. That's something that really important for you too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, yeah.
just in, you maybe talk about that a little bit for those, listeners that, they've got this mountain of maybe tasks on their desk, and you must have a crazy schedule. You must be super busy. And
Yeah, I take the word busy out of my vocabulary because that is something that communicates something I think we don't intend to, which means that sometimes it's used to not communicate with other people, to deflect from work. And so, like, that's one of the things that I actually talk about in my next book. So instead, it is not a priority. And that's really being honest with people. Like, if you say, I don't have time right now because I have these other priorities, but I would like to schedule that down the road, then you're being super honest.
yeah,
And so I do that a lot with people. So like,
your
if
mother.
you're a priority, I'm going to make time for you. But if what you're doing is not a priority for me, then I will let them know that right now that's not a priority for me, but it might be down the road. But if I never want to do it, I don't want them to get the idea that I'm too busy for something. I just let them and be very clear on communicating with them that that is not something that's going to work with what my goals are right now, but I appreciate you reaching out. And if it changes, I'll let you know, but I don't want them reaching out back to me. And so I do a lot of that with people, but I also time manage the heck out of my life. I drive my husband crazy because he doesn't like that as much. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna say, I mean, just being at a couple conferences, I've had agents come up to me, and this is before I've met you, or I mean, even seen you before, and they say, "Oh yeah, Dawnyel's helping me with this." I'm like, who's Dawnyel, right? And so it's like there's quite a few agents that have told me that. So you've made a huge impact, not only with what you've done in your business, but also for other independent agents out there. And I think that's incredible. And so what we talked a little bit before the podcast, but what are some things you're doing to build value for agents right now?
Yeah. So I always tell agencies that if I'm going to work with them and do coaching, and I do quite a bit of that, I do enjoy it, is that I cannot be more invested in growing you than you are. So like, there's criteria and parameters and boundaries around it, but nothing gets me more excited work-wise than seeing people tap into their potential, get really real about the things that they want to change, and then actually implement things. So like, I put a lot more time out for that than probably most things do. And then and I don't charge anything for it either, which is the crazy part, but I really like to help people. But within the group, one of the things that we want to do is, and I've been talking about this book nonstop. My husband actually handed it to me from his work, and he doesn't read. He's like, here's a book I think you will like, that his work gave him. And it's called Upstream, and it's all about proactive solutions. And so like, we tend to be downstream in doing reactive solutions. And so for me, when the hard market hit, I said, well, what is the upstream solutions that we can do for agencies and then help them to pivot, to help them, find their wins. And so we started putting together what's called the hard market helper. We have wins that are highlighted out there. So personal lines is really rough right now, but there's still a lot of ways you can win with commercial, and you can still win with personal lines, but you got to define what those wins look like now. They just look different. You're going to have to really truly underwrite, which is something we went away from as an industry, and thank goodness we're getting back, because then that'll help our carriers get more profitable. But we spotlight like Kelly from Agency Performance Partners. She is Hard Market Hero. So we have links to that in our intranet for our agencies. We have links to David Carruthers with Killing Commercial, because we believe in programs like that. Mike Stromso as well, to help agencies. So those are like resources that they can do so they can start getting more proactive on it. But also it's like, how do you proactively communicate with your team what's happening within the industry? So we did a webinar explaining what is happening with reinsurance, why carriers are taking the actions that they're taking. And then we created all the data behind it to be able to have those conversations with their team. And we created like underwriting changes, price changes. So then you can decide like, what are we going to do differently with what's going on in the marketplace? And so that's like I said, like the book Stream, I'm on my second reading of it and really dissecting it. So like the second time I'm halfway through it, but I go really slowly. If I read a book twice, that's not common. I usually read it once and quickly digest it. But
Right.
second time, I will do like a really slow digestion process for that.
For me, it's like 3 times until I digest it.
Now, do you read or do you do the Audible?
I read. I love the tangibility of a book. I feel like it makes you slow down. And then I do podcasts if I'm exercising.
Okay.
We knew
Oh,
that. That's what we
nice.
brought you on.
That's great. So, one thing I like to ask everybody is switching gears a little bit is top performers, they seem to have like a great morning routine. So I was wondering what yours is. Since you're
It's funny, we're going to go back to Darren again.
Yeah.
No.
She's like, I'm out.
I have coffee with Darren every day during the week. And I get up and I mentally go through my head of, if I finished one thing today and just one thing, what would that be? And how do I make a priority for that day?
Mhm.
So that's the thought in my head
And
every
real
single
quick, Dawnyel, for our listeners, so you have the email come to you for the Darren Daily,
day.
and
Yes,
you watch him with his Darren Daily, correct?
I do.
Because we know you're kind of friends with him. Okay, so she's not actually doing a Zoom or having coffee with Darren.
No. Everyone can do Darren Daily. My team does Darren Daily too.
And we all recommend it here.
Yes. And it's funny because like they'll send in teams like, oh my gosh, that was so right on point that Darren talked about this. And it sounds like Darren is like another part of our office, like a team
Right.
member, with the way that we converse in teams with it sometimes. So it's kind of cool that they're a part of it too, and that I've been able to help, them frame their mornings a little bit better. My husband swears I need to start working out first thing in the morning, but my body is like telling me that's not what I want to do. I like working out like at 4 p.m.
But you must
Yeah.
have, I mean, to grow like that, you must have just an incredible culture and environment.
And discipline for sure.
Yeah. But I'd like to know, like, people must want to work for the organization. And so what are some of the things they can do or that you do in order to create that type of environment and culture?
I think first and foremost, the leader needs to take their ego out of the way. And their ego gets in the way. So I feel like it's really important to make sure that your team is allowed to communicate with you if things are going wrong, not just when they're going right, and really give like credible feedback. We always say, that we want our team to throw hard, but please don't punch me in the face kind of thing. So that's what we're looking for from our team. And so like it takes a while to get there. I was talking to somebody the other day and I was like, I had a nightmare team like 6 years ago, probably even less than that. And but we all kind of came together and we, if you get the right people, they'll start kicking out the people that are like the boogeyman, like sitting in a desk next to you kind of thing. No more nightmares. So I think it's really important to give people the ability to know that you respect their opinions. I always end a meeting with, is there anything I'm mucking up? And is there anything I can do to help you?
Yeah.
So they know that our job is to make sure we're of service of the people that we lead.
No, that's awesome, Dawnyel. Now, for you, you get invited to speak at different trade shows, different meetings. What is a topic you like to talk about? Like one of the biggest topics that you're like excited to talk about to other agents?
Right now, I'll integrate it with my second book, which is called I'll Own It. And it's all about accountability, personal accountability to yourself and to others. And there's different pillars of accountability. So my son and I went through the journey when he was in high school to talk about owning it in his life, because at the time he wasn't. And I had full on mom rage and was like, I was writing a book about accountability and I was like, he normally is like, he's a really good kid. So I just had high expectations of him so that he would never lie to me, which was like a really like he was never going to achieve that one. So but I started working with him in high school about owning it, and we came up with the pillars that go along with the letters I'll own it. So it's integrity, leadership, liability, open-mindedness, work, no excuses, initiative, and truth. And
I
it's
don't know.
really, yeah, so we went through it every week.
Rewatch this and write that down.
I know I went through it really fast. If you go to allownit.com, you'll see it. So the website is there. It has a couple of my blogs from back in the day when we did it. And so I really love speaking about that right now. So for me to be able to talk to people and then like, how do you become personally accountable? And a lot of people are missing that right now. And there's a lot of disconnects between yourself and between other people because you're not taking accountability in certain pillars of your life. And so I define it of the different letters that I talked about of I'll own it, and really going deeply on how do you get to an authentic place for yourself, not for others, but for yourself. So like the word integrity is the first word for a reason. So like integrity is very open to like yours could be totally different than mine. And guess what? That's okay. Right. But do you have integrity that matches? Or do you have integrity where there is a disconnect? And you have to realize that in other people, right? And so you may think somebody's not being accountable to you, but you may have integrity that's totally on totally different like sides of the street. So you need to be able to understand who is a disconnecting person in regards to integrity so you can live your own, but also not be completely, telling them they're wrong for having theirs. I think if we did that like in politics or things in general, like religion with people, we wouldn't have some of the issues that we have. We would have an understanding that we just have a disagreement in what we think is important and what we find to define integrity.
Really makes you rethink things. I mean, that's deep for sure.
Well, it's easy to hold other people accountable. It's way easier than holding yourself accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Really, integrity, I look at it as doing the right thing when nobody's watching is kind of my definition of that. But you're right. I mean, people have a different idea and definition of maybe what integrity means to them.
Mm-hmm.
For
And
sure.
defining it for yourself. So like we adopt other people's sense of integrity. We adopt our parents first and the things that they feel are priorities. And so you have to get to a point like your 20s, like I don't know if it was for you guys, but my 20s was like, I'm going to reject all the things that I learned when I was a kid. And in some ways, and then you go back to it, and you're like, okay, some of them I'm going to adopt.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell my parents I'm adopting
Yeah.
those,
Right.
things of integrity that they held, really closely. But I think that we need to define it for ourselves. We may select to adopt somebody's integrity and we end up in a relationship with them and then it's a disconnect for you as a person. So you're not being true to yourself. You're not owning who you are. You're owning somebody else's identity of who you should be.
Yeah. Yeah. I had one of those meetings with my son, and I know I read in your book where you came home and the house was a mess, and you're like, you don't even pay for anything. Like, you can't keep the house clean. But I asked my son to do these things, and he didn't do them when he said he would do them. And so I'm like, all right, you can't do anything today. He had my belt. He wore my golf shoes that I told him he shouldn't be wearing, and they were dirty. Like, you're going to return them dirty after they're not even yours.
I can only imagine this scene.
And he used and he used one of my shirts for his senior pictures, but it was like wadded up in the back of my wife's car.
Gabriel.
And it's like, hold on, time out here, pal. Like, time out. Like, come on. You're going to be held accountable. You cannot not follow through. And you told me, and I even brought it up, like I've told you 2 or 3 times. So it's like, nothing happens. Do it all now.
I think Gabriel needs to read Dawnyel's.
He's
book.
going to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the crazy part about it, as I've done the research on accountability and owning it, is that we cannot force our views of owning it and accountability on others. They have to adopt it either for a moment or a lifetime. And that is frustrating as hell.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Like, why?
Yeah.
Dawnyel, no.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm crushing your dreams of, your son picking up the clothes. It may not happen.
A lot, and you may talk to it a little bit about, with your parents, and it's caught, not taught, right? Mm-hmm. So they might not have it now, but they'll probably catch it.
Yes.
More than even teaching it.
What she's saying, I've had to learn that, throughout my years, and you're so passionate with some things that like you literally have to tell someone. I've noticed that about you, but you don't force it at all. You try your hardest to, tell someone like, hey, this is what worked for me or what I've seen work for others. But I can tell when they're not receptive to it, you're just like, your mind's almost like, how? Right? And so what she just said, it rings so true, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to give up.
True.
You want to help the person.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like,
you got to have a cutoff point almost, right? Or it's like, not going to work.
Yeah, for sure. Like with hiring, right? I mean,
yeah.
They're like, no, I'm fine. I don't need to hire any more people. And it's like, but like the growth that they can get, the freedom that they can have and more choices they can have and to build their business by adding more people to their business.
Plus,
and
you just said the 2 people that are with you don't really like.
Yeah.
They're
like, no, I'm fine. They're like, what?
Yeah.
Well, it goes into like hand in hand with like, you can do the feel, felt, found method with people and then have them like decide for themselves. That's why I said I'm always educating, not selling. So if I'm educating them and asking them like, where have you been before? Where are you right now? Where do you want to go? And they have their own words. And then you take their words and you put it back at them and say, well, you said that this was important to you. So, and then you connect it because really people, all they care about is usually themselves. In the conversation. Like that's one of the things as a leader, I'm like, I have to teach myself all the time. Am I truly listening to the thoughts of other people and letting them sink in? Or am I a dictator with a really big like ego? So that's why I say, is your ego in the way? Is your ego out of the way? But I think most of us operate as dictators, especially parents. It's so much easier just to like dictate them because I don't have time to explain it sometimes. It's so exhausting.
Right. How old are your kids?
I have 11, 15, and 25.
Oh, wow. You got your hands full.
Yeah. Well, one of them's out of the house, so he's responsible. So, but yeah, the 2 other ones, they're almost like self-manageable. So that's great.
Is the 25-year-old in the insurance industry now?
Yeah, he actually does work with me. He works in our closing team that does the back end paperwork for producers. And he swore that would be the worst job ever in the world to go work with his mother.
Right.
but
Need
then
more in insurance
yes,
industry, right?
but I have an awesome IT guy who helped start our closing team, Albert, and he's like, I would like to be like Albert when I grow up and like do what Albert does. And so it was more about Albert than me coming into working with us. And
Yeah.
we have layers, like he calls me by my first name, and he's got Albert as a boss, and then Albert has a boss, and then it's me. So a lot of people go like, how's he doing today? I'm like, I have no idea.
How cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's great that he's in I mean, there are so many roles that you could play, especially in an organization of your size. It's not just everyone selling insurance. You need a lot more people than that.
Well,
Um,
also though, there's a shortage, right, Danielle, of the new generations getting into insurance. But on the flip side, I will say that generations who have that own the business, they're not probably doing a good enough job of attracting the
Mhm.
yeah.
incoming generations into insurance. So, have you had conversations like that with other agents, or is that something you've been seeing as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think that what we did before as an industry in hiring is totally different than what we need to do now. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you got to make it fun. You got to be a place that people are like, oh, that would be kind of cool to work there, right? So you got to have that edge of fun. Like we call ourselves the dream team. We have the dream team invitation, and we ask 3 questions before you actually do anything else. And that is that we ask them, what are your superhero skills as a team member when you're working in a job? The second thing is that what are things you don't want to do? And then thirdly is what type of team and environment would you want to work in? And so you get a really good idea of like, could this person be a fit just from those 3 questions pretty quickly? And you can understand if they can write a sentence and put grammar to it and a period too. So right away you get that. I mean, we've utilized you guys for a long time on the front end of trying to, vet out, um, people. But I think that you have to have a clear conversation with them about how your organization works and where their path could be. And it can't just be about you talking. You need to listen more to the people that you're interviewing and what they would like, and can they see a path with you, not just what the position is now, but is there an opportunity down the road? So they got to be excited about that.
yeah, that's gold there, folks. And, listening to that. And it's true. Too many times, I think agents, they look at this is the position we have today, but what is the total opportunity that they could have? What could they grow into?
Paint the picture,
Where
show the
could they,
vision.
yeah, like really get into, this could be a starting point, but the opportunities are endless.
And she already went over, I mean, if you're talking about the C's, right? Culture, she talked about that. The career opportunity, she painted the
Yeah.
picture, and then compensation. I'm sure she's competitive too. And that's why
Yeah.
people like working at her agency.
Well, I think it's really important that you clearly communicate, though, that this might be a fit for you in the beginning, but if you grow and it's not a fit for you, that they have not been sworn off as the enemy when
Yeah.
they leave your organization. Like we've had someone recently that he moved somewhere and our office just wasn't, convenient for him and his family with a new kid coming on the way. And so like, and he didn't want to work from home because we do have some hybrid positions or work from home positions because we give some flexibility. But we weren't going to be like, now you're dead to us. Like, I think that sends a signal to all the rest of the team that if they do anything that can slightly be something you don't want them to do, that you're now signaling that they would be dead to you too.
Yeah.
So I think not just in the hiring, but also in the transition, we call it liberation. We don't call it firing or quitting. We just say they've been liberated to do the next thing that fits what they need to do.
Yeah.
Like that.
And what's great for them too. And if somebody's ready to move on, they're literally doing not only themselves, but the agency a disservice by even being there. So it's like,
Oh, right. If their passion's not there,
if they're passionate,
Yeah.
you have to
fulfillment's not there. Like,
not only like
yeah.
let them go, but strongly encourage them. If someone's having a conversation, come into your office and be like, I'm just not sure if this is for me, then it's like, I am not selling them on that opportunity. I mean, I am encouraging them to like be free. Like, go do what you think you need to do, for sure.
And they have to understand that you need to do what you need to do too. And
Right.
so if you explain to them, hey, down the road, if this, we feel like this is not, you're not a fit for the organization, we're going to let you know, but we're going to try and do it in an honorable way. It's really hard. When you liberate somebody and you're the one that's liberating, like they are never happy with you. So ever, like there is no way to let someone go and have them be okay with it. Like that's the worst part. I feel like I have to do sometimes is to let people go. Um, but because they won't give us the same respect back that it wasn't a fit for us anymore, that we give to them, that it wasn't a fit for them to be with us anymore. So sometimes that, the inner like pissed off person, like about being the boss of having to let people go goes, that's
Right.
not right. But they are making that decision to react that way. I can't control that. You can't control that as the owner, the boss, whatever. Like you can't. So you just got to realize like, hey, it's try and make it as respectful as possible when you're liberating them and you're letting them go. But do realize that they're not going to give you the same amount of grace that you're going to give them. But that's okay. That's just kind of like, that's the natural dynamic. I kept trying to figure out like, how do we perfect liberating people that we want to let go? Not that I wanted to like, oh, and you got fired and you got fired and you got fired. I wasn't trying to like massively fire people, but like, how do we do that better? Right. So like, and that's the conclusion I came to. They're not going to like you. You're not going to be their favorite person like during that time period ever, ever. But you can do it respectfully.
Right. I like that. Liberating.
Liberating.
It sounds way better.
Just reminded me of Oprah, like, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car.
Yes, exactly.
And so, but it took you time to like get rid of that, so much of the emotion, probably, right? Because at first you're probably like, I don't want to fire them, or I like them, but
Oh, I am still super emotional about it. I hate it. I get invested in the people that work with me. And so it is super hard for me to say that it's time to liberate them. It's never good. You can ask my COO. She's like, probably would say, oh, she's a hot mess. Like every single time we have to do this because she knows that person probably will be going, I will never talk to her again. I hate her now. Like, and yesterday they could have said, you're the most amazing person. I love you so much. I can't imagine never talking to you. So like, that's what's going to happen. So in my head, I can deliver it better before, but in my head, I am like not happy about it at all. Like,
Yeah, for
and it's
sure.
okay. Acknowledge it. Like I acknowledge this is not fun when you have to tell somebody they're not a good fit. It's literally you're breaking up with people, right? Like who hears about like a good breakup? That's just like that doesn't usually happen like right away. I've had people down the road like that have come back and it's funny because they'll come back and they're like, hey, I totally get why you fired me. Like, and I'm sorry I reacted the way that I did. And can we be cool now? I'm like, yeah, I was totally cool then. And so I've had them come back like down the road, but don't count on that. Don't count on that. That's a rarity. That's not the majority.
Right.
that's
Yeah.
funny. Before we wrap up, I know you're going to have a question or two. I want to ask you this. I read your bio, but I didn't get into like the hobbies that you have outside of work. So what are some of the things that you just love to do, and things that keep you sane with everything you got going on in your line of work?
Uh, Obsessive reader. I love Pilates, and I love golf. I like playing golf. I will never practice golf. I'll do it once in a while. My husband's like, come on, it's been a really long time and your swing is really awful. But
So you don't expect to get better.
yeah, well,
Enjoy
no, I'm
there.
consistent. I just feel like I don't need to practice. Like I can shoot in the 80s and 90s and I can like not have
You're
to
all annoyed at
practice.
people right now listening to this.
Right.
What's the best part of your game?
My lob wedge.
Oh, man, that's
So specific.
yeah.
Yeah, I love my lob wedge. Cannot putt at all, but I love my lob wedge. So I wouldn't say my short game's great, but my lob wedge is pretty good.
That's awesome.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Give a plug to my daughter's 13. Nope, she just turned 14.
Happy birthday, Mace.
Yep, Macy, and she just got her 4th club champ at our club, so it was super fun
Oh,
last
that's
weekend to
awesome.
watch her win that. It was cool. But
She shouldn't listen to this
girls
though,
can golf, man.
because don't we want her to play a lot?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dawnyel,
And
gets
probably
like
not
once
swear
every
a whole
2
bunch.
weeks and shoots in the
We could have
80s.
Tito can
Yeah, we got to edit that part out.
We'll have 2 versions.
Right.
But
There's a big disparity of how I play though too. Like some rounds, it's really awesome. I had a round recently where it was like I started off with a birdie, right? So like fabulous way to start off, right? So
right.
then I got 4 pars, and then it was like double, double, double. So like I
Did you
said,
start
practice.
drinking or something? What happened there?
That's just because I don't practice, probably.
Yeah.
No, it's because she was hitting like shit.
Yes, that
You
is
don't
true.
have her shit,
We need
remember?
to go back to saying shit. So one episode I can
I
swear.
was just playing on it.
Gotta do full circle moment here.
Yeah.
We've all hit like shit before, let's be honest.
I hit like shit every day when I'm not injured. Yeah.
Uh,
I think golf is just like a message for life, right?
Oh
Like
my gosh.
the next shot could be awesome, right?
Yeah.
So you just gotta you always live for that next shot. You're in the middle of a round. You're like, why do I play this game? Why do I do this? You have your little toddler tantrum, and then you go and you hit the next one, and it's like perfection, and it comes off the club just right, and you're like, oh, okay, I'll play again tomorrow.
that's why, right.
The full mental
And sometimes
battle
it'll
against
end up-
yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so
Yes.
many life skills into one.
Oh
Mhm.
yes. There's a lot of emotional intelligence that you have to have in that. And then it's like just like business. Like I see, like when I said I had to grow up, I would probably say the emotional intelligence level was probably not as high.
All right, so I've got a question. So I was captive, and a lot of our clients are captive, but we got a lot of independent as well, for sure. And so on the captive side, they feel a whole lot of pressure right now, and with rates going up, and they feel like, they have no options, and the independent space are crushing them. So that's their point of view. But then I heard you say that you felt like there's a lot of pressure on the personal side as well on your end. So somebody has to be winning at it. And like what, how does that sit with you? What's your interpretation of that?
I think that we got from being an industry of like selling value to an industry of selling price.
Yeah.
And so on both sides, when rate and is all over the place for both sides, then you can't sell on price anymore. You're gonna have to get really good at selling value. So I would say the ones that are winning on the captive space are probably selling value, and the ones that are winning on the independent space are probably selling value. And if you're selling on price, it's going to be hard for you to navigate. And that's why I'm like, you got to pivot. You got to figure out like where are your wins. And so I think it's the same on both sides.
Yeah. So true. And, I've always just preached and thought that, when value exceeds price, that's when people buy every time. Like there's nothing we ever bought in our life that the value didn't exceed the price. You might regret it later, but at that moment, if you gave the money, then the value was more because you gave up what you had, the check, the credit card, whatever, for that item, whatever it is. And so whenever somebody says no, they're telling you that the value does not exceed the price, and you have to sell on value for sure in today's market. And I think
Well, I feel
always.
like it got really easy. I feel like we hit the easy button on underwriting. I feel like we tried to hit the easy button on data entry. And then
Yeah.
we tried to hit the easy button on selling on price. And so like it hurt us as an industry.
Yeah.
And profitability is a true issue for us and our carriers. And so we have to go back to the basics. And yes, it's hard. And I'm really hoping it weeds out those that are what I consider the lazy agent, that they're not willing to fight to show their client the value or, work to earn the business that
Yeah.
they have, that they can show like it's not just a policy that you're putting in place today, but it's a policy that they can grow into later. I mean, I have clients that they're like, it always amazed me because there's a certain product line from one of our carriers and I really loved it and it fit really great for clients that were established and preferred. And I sold it like 15 years ago to them, and still to this day, they're still with that same product line. And some of them took like a 50% increase. And they're like, well, Dawnyel said 15 years ago that
Right.
this coverage was the type of coverage that I needed for my type of, financial well-being of my family. And they'll take the rate increases and they'll understand it if they understand why you place them. And the problem is we keep remarketing them. Oh, it's went up. Okay, no problem. We'll reshop you. Well, 80% of our remarkets right now are staying with the same company
Yeah.
that they're with already. So why are we spinning our wheels, hiring more people in retention than ever to retain the clients? What we're really doing is we are superficially shopping them and teaching them to stay on price.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my soapbox.
You're teaching them. No, yeah, well, you are right. I mean, you're really teaching them like they might be okay, and you're saying, no, wait, we know it went up, so let us work on it. Let us shop it around because price is most important. And again, we've talked about this too in other episodes, like selling out of your own pocket. Like maybe that producer themselves is looking for ways to save money and they're projecting it on somebody else. But I remember, like, I mean, our original home policy that we sold, we would tell everybody, say, listen, there's going to be new products that come out. You don't want to switch from this one. Claims don't count against you. You know, all these things, the rate increases will be smaller. There'll be a new, shiny, attractive one down the road, but don't switch. Just, to your point, Dawnyel told me to stick with this one.
They're going to bring up the orange versus the apples too.
Well, that's a good analogy.
Got a lot in the pocket.
Yeah. Well, just people are always looking, give me the apples comparison, right? And it's like, no, you got to be the orange. Like you have to be different. And that used to like grate on me, like apples to apples comparison.
Great way of dealing with competitors too, for sure. Like, okay, might not be a good fit if price is the only thing you're looking for.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like my job is to advise you. My job isn't to be a matchmaker, like on your insurance levels. It's not. Like it could be somewhere where I don't believe you should be. Like, let's have a conversation about it. And even with remarkets, I think it's really important that insurance agencies, they talk to the client and they just say, like, since we last, talked or wrote your policy, what things have changed in your life? And it's amazing. They'll start disclosing some stuff that you're like, okay, so we need to talk about actually revising what we currently have for you. But I think the carrier that you have fits where you're at right now, but let's make some changes and be able to do that. So you're getting them off of the price. You're honoring that, hey, that's fantastic. Your life changed. You have a teenager coming up. Well, if I move you to another carrier, like that carrier is really awful with youthfuls, but it looks really good for a month until they turn 16. So like, let's have that conversation first, because you may be creating a reshop moment in a month that, if they turn 16 and they're being added to the policy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's being their advisor and of all sense of the word, instead of, cut coverages agency down the street, how they just cut all the coverages out just to try to, sell and price. But I don't think there's anybody that's ever been in an accident, either a bad one or even a fender bender that, they want, especially the bad one, and they want coverage. And they say, Dawnyel, I just want to make sure I got the cheapest price. I got a major accident. So did I get the cheapest price? I need to know that.
Yeah.
It doesn't come up. It's not important. They want to know reality. They're probably hoping they paid the most for the best coverages when it comes in time of need.
Yeah, I love our waiver forms that we have that are outside of what the carriers require us to have, which is we say, we have the insured sign off, like, I understand that I did not elect comp and collision on my vehicle. And this means that if I get into an accident, like it spells it out for them. And then like, I elected not to have an umbrella policy. So if it like, and they go through it and they start reading it, and there a lot of times you can get them to come back and go, wait, I don't want to sign this. Well, why don't you want to sign it? Let's talk about it. Right. And then you can sell a different policy. And you can change the conversation. Because like if I would have matched what you had before, you didn't have that coverage. So you said it wasn't a priority, but you don't want to sign off on it. So we use that as, a CYA for your, but we also use it as one of our best account rounding tools too.
For sure. No, that's great. Really good.
You guys could talk about this for days.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally geeked out.
No.
Everyone's got to get to their families.
Yeah.
Dawnyel, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. If agents want to connect with you, are they able to, and how do they do it? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so probably the easiest way to find me is I actually have my own website, and it's DawnyelSmink.com. So DAWNYELSMINK.com. And then it has all the different things I do.
And on the captive side too, can they connect with you? We have quite a few.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Because like I've been captive before, and I helped a lot of captives go independent. But on the other side, I've helped a lot of captives actually stay captive. So I have a lot of people that refer me and say, hey, I'm looking at going independent. Well, sometimes wherever you're at in the phase of your career, it may not be the best idea for you to make that move at that time. And I'm not so greedy or egocentric. Like I said, take the ego out of the way, listen to the person and say, I think you're in a good place right now.
Yeah. Well, and I bet they can find this book there too.
Yes.
Well, make sure you get your copy. This book is
100%.
really, like, I was really impressed. I mean,
I cranked it on the plane and I never read a whole book.
No, my last book, I think, was James and the Giant Peach.
Oh my gosh.
Your kids or just for yourself?
I've listened to a ton of books, but it was, I don't know, maybe is this
first off,
an
Kevin
audible
falls
option?
asleep on the plane at the time.
Well, that's not true at all.
I mean, unless it's a flight to Pennsylvania.
I'm listening to a book 99% of the time.
I'm just saying, like any flight we do to Florida, California, Vegas, I mean, you are falling asleep at one point.
Well,
every time I've been with you.
Okay. All right. You don't fly with me that much then.
I guess that's true.
So here's what thank you so much. And I love the fact that how much of a giver you are.
Yeah, seriously.
And all of the time to give back is awesome. You've got website to help give, your time, and that's why you're so successful, is just being able to give. You're getting it all back tenfold for sure. So
well, I think I've had a philosophy, the more you give, the more you get. And so I feel like that's always served me really well in my life. And I feel very fortunate to be at the point that I am, that I can give warning labels to people sometimes on things, but also I can give them encouragement of, overcoming obstacles and finding your path, and that my path is going to be different than yours. And so I feel like I'm very fortunate that I've gotten to this point in my career, but I'm insanely think I'm just starting in the industry in regards to what I can really, really do, which I'm like, after 2 decades, most people are like, hey, I think I might simmer down. I'm like, oh, no. I've learned enough to be truly dangerous and impactful. And that's what I believe about myself. So I hope other people out there get to a point that they feel the same exact way.
That keeps it exciting for you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like all those failures are what make you great, and be able to help somebody because you've failed and you've done it before and you were there and you found out what it takes to overcome, which is what they're hurting from, and you can relate. And it's like the more failures, the more opportunity you have to help people, for sure.
Last thing, when do you think that book will be out?
I'm trying to finish it by the end of the year. On it. So that's my goal. By the beginning of next year, I'll have it all completed.
We're going to hold you accountable.
Okay, thank you. My editor is too right now. I'm a half a chapter behind, I think, right now on what I owe her. So like this weekend, I'm going to do some massive writing. I think one of the things with writing for me sometimes is like, I need to feel inspired and to really get it on paper. And some days I don't feel inspired. So I don't want to just like grin and bear it and put it out there and have it not feel like it's authentic.
That's what you are. Authentic.
I got to pick your brain too. I told Kev I want to write a book, but I don't think I know how much actually goes into it.
Oh man. I mean, you can do it.
Rude awakening.
It's massive.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's so that's a really good point though. Like you have to be feeling it and not just doing it just to do it. Like
Mhm.
you have to put your heart and soul in it.
Thank you, Dawnyel.